So this question asks, can you talk about people with PCOS and why there's a divide on whether to identify as intersex? For those who don't know, PCOS stands for Polycystic Ovarian Syndrome. PCOS is a hormonal disorder that affects people who are assigned female at birth and typically includes things like hyperandrogenism, which is the higher production of testosterone, which then causes things like a lack of periods, body and facial hair growth, oilier skin and acne, and other such characteristics. On the question of whether or not PCOS falls under the intersex umbrella, the answer is yes, PCOS absolutely does fall under the intersex umbrella. For someone to fall under the intersex umbrella, they simply have to have characteristics that don't neatly fit into either binary sex category, and that includes things like chromosomes, internal anatomy, external genitalia, and it also includes hormones. So when we see people with PCOS who are assigned female at birth that have testosterone that is essentially on par with a lot of cis men, yeah, that definitely falls under the umbrella. Unfortunately, there is a lot of pushback for people with PCOS to identify as intersex, and honestly, in recent years, I'm not even seeing this pushback come from other intersex people. I'm seeing this pushback come more from people with PCOS who don't want to be intersex or don't want to fit under the intersex umbrella. And in my experience, that tends to come from either a place of miseducation about the intersex experience or internalized shame and stigma surrounding it. Occasionally, I do see people with PCOS who don't necessarily think that they can claim the intersex experience because they don't think that they've been through the, quote unquote, right experiences in order to call themselves intersex, such as, genital surgery or being mistreated by healthcare professionals and things like that. But like most people with PCOS do have the experience of being mistreated by healthcare officials and being talked down to and being discriminated against because they have PCOS. So I also think that, that's just another layer of gatekeeping. There's also an added layer because doctors and other healthcare professionals really, really, really do not want people to identify as intersex. They don't want people to be able to have access to community, to care, to advocacy. And so doctors are also sort of on the front lines of being like, people with PCOS, you are not intersex. In fact, the intersex community has recently crunched the numbers, and whereas prior we used to think that there was 1 in 2,000 people were intersex, if we consider PCOS to be an intersex variation, that number goes to 1 in 20. At the end of the day, I'm never going to force anyone to identify as intersex, and no one in the intersex community wants to force people to identify as intersex if they don't feel connected to the label. But I do think that PCOS falls under the label and that y'all can claim the word intersex.
Polycystic ovary syndrome, or PCOS, is often portrayed by trans rights activists as an example of how sex is really on a spectrum, and how intersex people are really more common than you might believe. Many websites which report on the topic will even write about it in a vague, gender-neutral language to accommodate these erroneous beliefs. However, as this is an affliction that requires having ovaries, and only women have ovaries, using gender-neutral language erases the medical misogyny inherent in the lack of research and treatment options. Additionally, it serves as a way to hide that this is a disease that is common in women, and that having it does not make a woman lesser as a result of her symptoms.
Alright, so let's get into this full face wax. I waited a little over 3 weeks, I believe, to do this. And throughout this video, we are just going to address a few things. But before we go there, don't mind my nails. I had just took off press-ons, and we want to thank Tress Wellness for being a sponsor of this wax video. So the major key, or the ignorance, really lies in the question of people asking, are you a man? And the answer is no. As I have answered before, I was born a woman and I have not undergone any type of transition. I always hashtag PCOS. I always hashtag hirsutism to give you guys a little more insight. I've also done a full video discussing what hirsutism is, hormonal imbalance, and things of that nature. Now, to answer the question regarding how I let my hair grow out this thick, well, the first thing I'll say is the hair doesn't really start to show up until around the 2-week mark. When you establish a schedule of waxing, your hair also establishes a regrowth pattern. So what might look super thick to you didn't start to appear until around the 2 or 3 week mark. And around that time, I may procrastinate or whatever the case is, depending on what I have to do in my schedule. But around that time, I will be waxing it off and I get a better wax because there is more growth. Moving on, I do not post these videos with question marks on the screen asking you guys, hey, what's wrong with me because I'm growing hair on my face. I've done my research and I continue to do my research. I've talked to who I needed to talk to. We don't ask for open-ended essay responses in regards to our health, weight, hormones, or anything of that nature in the comments. I also don't post these videos asking for feedback as far as my wax application. Although I am not licensed, I have studied multiple estheticians. I wax with the growth and against the growth. Sometimes I don't pull my skin taut because it's really hard to record and try to show you all and try to achieve smooth results. Every wax will not be perfect. I do this to achieve the results that I want. And if I'm satisfied with it, that's all that matters. So let's get into what has actually helped me as a woman with PCOS. When it comes to facial hair growth, I really prefer to wax over anything else. Yes, I have heard of laser. No, I have not considered it. However, I am trying to be more consistent with drinking my spearmint tea and also trying to prioritize what I do put in my body. Being more active has helped me. Waxing on a consistent schedule has also helped my hair become thinner and grow less over time. And that has also helped slow the regrowth of my hair. There are some supplements out there that can help, and some women have mentioned them in the comments. Personally, I'm not a fan of big medicine, so if I can go a holistic route, I do try to. As I read more, research more, and learn more, I will make you guys more aware of the information I come across. And lastly, the reason I post these waxes are to bring some calm and some satisfaction to some of you all, so I hope y'all enjoyed.
As noted by Mayo Clinic, with PCOS, many small sacs of fluid develop along the outer ridge of the ovary. These are called cysts. The small fluid-filled cysts contain immature eggs. These are called follicles. The follicles fail to regularly release eggs. The exact cause of PCOS is unknown. Early diagnosis and treatment along with weight loss may lower the risk of long-term complications such as type 2 diabetes and heart disease. PCOS affects an estimated 8 to 13% reproductive aged women, and up to 70% of affected women remain undiagnosed worldwide. And yet, the illness itself remains shrouded in mystery. Despite being common, it takes an average of 2 years to be diagnosed. Many women who have PCOS struggle with feeling that they don't live up to the expectations of femininity, and along with the hormone issues, have been thrust into the gender identity battle as pawns to negotiate the inclusion of men in women's spaces, particularly sports.
Did you know that PCOS can be our superpower? Scientists did a study on Olympic women and found that 40% had PCOS. This is 4 times higher than PCOS rates in the general population. Rates were even higher when they looked at sports that require explosive power, like hockey and wrestling. PCOS women make great athletes because having a little bit of extra testosterone can be a superpower. The trouble with testosterone is when it comes way too high and it starts to inhibit your day-to-day life because of the symptoms like fatigue and moodiness and acne and facial hair and hair loss. So essentially we want to manage our testosterone so the symptoms don't take over our lives, but we'll still have a little bit left as a superpower.
One qualitative study found that women with PCOS often perceive themselves with lack of physical attractiveness, loss of womanhood, interruption of sexual role, and disruption of fertility potential. Feelings were related to symptoms of excess hair, absent or disrupted menstrual cycle, obesity, and infertility commonly experienced with women with PCOS. After all, if hairy, infertile, fat women are women, according to trans-identified people, then surely men can be women too.
As someone who has PCOS, I also was really curious to know if I could be considered intersex, so I did some research a couple weeks ago, and, well, I'm glad you asked. The short answer, technically yes, medically no. The medical community doesn't consider people with PCOS to be intersex. However, because our bodies have more male hormones in them, and we're not like other cis females assigned at birth, yeah, we could classify as intersex. But doctors and gatekeepers of the intersex community don't want to categorize us as being intersex, because then that's more people that can identify as being intersex. And they don't want that. Some people in the intersex community do support people with PCOS identifying as intersex. At the end of the day, you can identify as any way you want to identify.
It is because women with PCOS have higher levels of androgens, often referred to as a male hormone, that they are compared to men or men who wish to be women. However, the levels of androgens in a woman are far lower than that of a man. Females of hyperandrogenism due to PCOS or CAH usually have testosterone levels within the normal adult female range, but levels above the normal female range are observed and can approach the lower limit of the normal male range, which is about 4 to 5-fold higher than the upper limit in normal females. In other words, women with medical conditions are still female and should be able to play on female sports teams as a result of their sex. Their medical condition does not excuse men who wish to be women and who pretend at being female athletes who are unjustly persecuted. At its heart, the resulting health issues that accompany PCOS illustrate how this is a medical condition, not an identity, and point to the dangers of meddling of hormones in trans-identified women. Additionally, the way that PCOS is discussed illustrates the demands of femininity in women. To be hairless, attractive, thin, and fertile, but rarely acknowledges that not meeting these demands does not make a woman lesser, that a woman's value is not in her appearance or her reproductive ability.
The arrogance for cis women to believe that they own period.
We own periods? No, honey, if you want my period, God bless, you can have it. You want my PCOS too? I mean, listen, you're gonna gain weight out of the blue for no reason other than you breathe the air. Your hair's gonna fall out. I'm rocking several beautiful bald spots. You can have those. The acne, let me tell you about the acne. And it's not cute little, oh my God, I have a pimple. It's big, cystic acne that I have to go and have drained because of my PCOS. You wanna shave?
Endometriosis is another disease which only affects women. It affects a large number of women, and yet receives little funding and research. As noted by WHO, endometriosis is a disease in which tissue similar to the lining of the uterus grows outside the uterus. This leads to inflammation and scar tissue forming in the pelvic region, and rarely elsewhere in the body, which can in turn result in chronic pelvic pain, heavy bleeding during periods or between periods, trouble getting pregnant, bloating or nausea, fatigue, and depression or anxiety. And yet, we don't know what causes either of these diseases or how to effectively treat them, despite the impact on many, many women. Trans rights activists and allies like to bring these up to support their belief of woman as a concept instead of a material class, as if these illnesses are not experienced solely by women, as if the dearth of research is not because they affect women and women alone.
I just saw a study that they did that ranked the attractiveness of people with endometriosis.
Like, what the actual fuck? Hello? At least they fucking retracted it.
So y'all are telling me that we can't figure out what causes endometriosis, we can't figure out how to cure it, we can't even figure out a good treatment for it. But we're gonna do studies on whether or not it makes you attractive or not. I'm so tired of this. I'm so fucking tired of this. I have lost my life to endometriosis. I don't give a fuck about whether or not it makes me attractive or...
These are medical conditions, not identities. But you don't have to take it from me. I've asked a friend of mine who has PCOS to give me some insight on her experience with the disease.
I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome when I was 18 years old. I hadn't experienced a period, like a menstrual period, from the ages of 16 to 18, and being extremely uneducated about women's, menstrual health care and everything like that. I just didn't tell anybody. So when I did tell someone, I told my mom. She took me to the doctor. I had an ultrasound done, and they found out that I have all the characteristic bumps on my ovaries. Those are the so-called cysts. They're actually not really so much cysts, but misnomers aside. I also have a very high level of androgens. So androgens would be what you would consider male sex hormones. So I also have a very low level, naturally, of estrogen and progesterone, so the female sex hormones. There's actually an enzyme that converts testosterone to estrogen in the body. There's theories for PCOS that doesn't work in us for some reason, but I digress. I have PCOS. I don't naturally have periods. I have more facial hair than a lot of women who don't have PCOS, and I build muscle mass easier. I I don't think my voice is that low. But yeah, the main thing is I may have reproductive difficulties as a result of PCOS. And due to PCOS, it causes insulin resistance, and now as a result, I have type 2 diabetes. So it has overarching health consequences, I would say. And when I was 18, all I really thought about was, I might not be able to have babies. That was the crushing part about it to me. When I got a bit older, and then, put on birth control because you're told that's the only thing you can do for PCOS when you're 18. So when I was older, I talked to some people about having PCOS and what it's been like, and I was told that, PCOS is an intersex condition. And I was confused because I was always under the impression that, like, if you're intersex, then there's something happening with your chromosomes. Either you're, like, XXY or you have androgen insensitivity or something like that. I took an endocrinology class in university, and we talked a lot about intersex conditions that happen, like, hormonally. But PCOS was never brought up with that. Like, we talked about CAIS, that's the most prevalent one when you think about it, but we never talked about PCOS as being an intersex thing. And I believe it could, it doesn't really change the fact that I have a uterus. I have a walking uterus. I have a vagina. I have ovaries. My fallopian tubes are intact. Nothing's wrong with, like, I have all of the structures. They developed correctly in utero. But the idea I saw mainly online and in some groups, I was part of a group for the LGBTQIA community on my campus, and they were pretty big proponents that PCOS is an intersex condition. And I was also asked several times in this group why I don't transition, because it would just be so much easier, because if I'm not making estrogen at the right level and I already have high testosterone, it would be an easy transition. Maybe it would. And I mean, I kind of sympathize a lot with intersex people who are coercively assigned a sex that may not match, what they believe they are or what they think they should be, or have their genitals mutilated when they're children to match what people think they should be, because it's not really an authentic expression of themselves. They weren't allowed to live in a way that matches their body. They were told to change their body. And in that sense, I sympathize, because I was told, you should just transition. You should change your body to fit something else because it might be easier for you. But I didn't want to do that. And the thing is, like, I don't agree nor disagree that PCOS is an intersex condition. I think there needs to be more research on PCOS to see if you can call it a hormonal intersex condition in the same way that you would call CAIS a hormonal intersex condition. Though I believe that I've never identified as being an intersex person. I was not coercively assigned a sex at birth. I'm female. My chromosomes are XX. So I don't see any issue with that. But I do disagree with people saying that I specifically must be intersex, because my PCOS, it's a syndrome, right? We don't even know that it's a disease of its own, right? Like, there's so many problems that can happen with PCOS, and I don't have all of them. I don't think it's right to say that, oh yes, you absolutely must be intersex when you have never felt that in your life. I don't know. I don't think we should be assigning people sex like that. Like, sex is pretty much immutable. If I was XXY or something, if I had something happening with my SRY gene, sure, but that there's nothing to indicate that anything like that has happened to me. And from what I know, I'm also not sterile, which a lot of intersex conditions are unfortunately also marked by. I'm not, like, I have been pregnant before. I did not carry the term. I didn't want to, but yeah, I suppose that's my experience with the PCOS. And I find that, people keep telling me that, oh, you don't know your basic biology. And I have a human biology degree from the top ranking institution in my country. And I'd like to think I know at least a little bit about the human body that I am. I am my body. My body is me. and I've studied it quite extensively. Thank you.
Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.